Hello, and thank you for joining us here on the Neutral Zone. I am Phil Milani, joined as always by my trusty sidekick, my partner in crime. Really, the best way to describe this person is my everything. It's at Eric Dalala.
Phil, good to see you. For those of people joining us on YouTube, are you lost? You in
A
the
little bit of
stadium?
a little bit of role reversal here, I would say, Eric. I am in the office today. You are at home. It looks like you just got up from a nice long nap. How are you
Exactly.
feeling?
Yeah, it's nice. I wanted to make sure I was well rested to listen to George Paton and Vic Fangio talk to the media on Thursday because I figured there'd be lots of news. Phil, I think I was right.
I think you're right too. Yeah, this is an action-packed episode of the Neutral Zone. I had a chance to chat one-on-one with George Paton, so we'll have that conversation and a lot of news, like you mentioned, Eric, to get to. We'll also hear from Vic Fangio, just talking about a lot of the questions that we have about the roster and what the Broncos' approach is going to be heading into the offseason. And I think a lot of that starts with Drew Lock.
Yeah, it definitely does, Phil. And I think while everyone's, maybe their hopes, their what they're wondering about is if another quarterback was going to come in. But I think for the first time in a few months, we got a real strong affirmation that this administration still believes in Drew Lock and thinks he can be something.
Yeah, it was interesting to just hear their attitudes to how they're approaching the quarterback position. And then it was also the first time we really heard them talk about Justin Simmons, Von Miller, a couple of guys that, their future with the organization is up in the air right now. So a lot of questions about that. And then also touched on right tackle Jawan James, who, of course, opted out last season, and what his future may hold. So a lot of things that for the very first time we're hearing George Paton talk about these players, and then also seeing if Vic Fangio is really on the same page as his general manager.
Yeah, I think it was interesting to hear them talk about their working relationship, Phil. But you got a sense that he wants a lot of guys to be back. We'll see if that happens or not. But still, even after hearing him speak on March 4th, a lot of decisions to be made before the start of free agency, even more before the draft. So things are starting to maybe become a little bit more clear, Phil, but a lot more pieces to put in place before the start of the season.
Yeah, I think that if anything, still a long ways away in figuring out what this team is going to look like. But at least we got a little bit of a clearer picture on the mindset that the Broncos are taking here into the offseason. So definitely a lot to get to here on this episode of the Neutral Zone. Eric, it would not be an episode of the Neutral Zone, though, if we didn't first talk about our loyal listeners, NZ Nation. Of course, shout out to Jeff Flanagan. He says that Malonia, his comment last week was a play on the previous week's Phil Maloney shout out. So a lot of Malonia, a lot of Italy talk.
Right. You say Malonia, I say Melania. It's all kind of the same.
We got a Dalala, we got a Milani,
Exactly.
we got a Fangio. A lot to talked about there. Desmond Ray also commented. He in the last episode we talked about him saying that it didn't look like we were really good friends, Eric. He says, well, just to me, it seems like one of you guys gets annoyed from time to time. That's all he meant. Of course, we're just joking around, Desmond. Appreciate you listening. And I do think that Eric quite often annoys me. So I guess I do.
Yeah, you're the one that often gets annoyed. I think that's fair.
Yeah. I don't know why you think that's a joke, Eric, because you do annoy me.
Yeah, I don't think it's a joke.
No, but of course, if you'd like to be involved, get a shout out here on the show, make sure you leave a comment here on YouTube, or you could call in and leave a voicemail. Haven't got a lot of voicemails recently, Eric. 707 neutral. Haven't got a lot of people leaving their comments. Maybe if you agree with what George Paton had to say today, maybe you liked what Vic Fangio had to say, maybe you don't. Leave a voicemail and we'll play it next week on the show. I think next week we're going to get into the draft a little bit more, Eric, and talk about what we heard from Vic Fangio today. But that'll be for next week's show. So maybe if you have a comment about the draft, leave that there, or they could also leave an email too, Eric.
That's right. You could leave an email at neutralzoneshow@gmail.com.
Yeah. So all the ways you can get involved in the show. Eric, let's just dive in though here on our first topic, talking about the Broncos quarterback position. There's been a lot of talk about, oh, were they involved with the Matthew Stafford talks? What's going on with Deshaun Watson? Quite frankly, it's becoming a little bit exhausting with trying to keep up on all the quarterbacks that could be available. It seems like some of those might be far reaches, a little bit of a stretch. George Paton was even asked about it today. He said that he can't comment about players on another roster, but it does seem like regardless of what happens this offseason, they definitely want to bring in more competition at that position. But at the same time, they're confident that Drew's going to take that next step.
Yeah, Phil, if I, just kind of extrapolating from what we heard, it almost sounded to me like maybe they aren't thinking about somebody that's going to come in and compete with Drew for the starting position. Maybe you're just thinking about elevating the backup position in case of an injury, in case Drew regresses. So to me, if I'm Drew Lock and I hear this, I like what I hear. I think it shows that they have some faith in you, that despite the struggles of last season, you still got a chance to get this figured out and be the long-term guy. And Phil, I'm sure you have thoughts, but I guess my overarching view is just that this is what he's supposed to be doing. He's supposed to be working really hard. He's supposed to be taking every opportunity he can to be in the building, to watching film outside, because I don't want to be dramatic, but it does feel like his NFL career kind of hangs in the balance here of what does he do next. And so if you're not taking every possible step to make sure you're the best QB you can be, you're wasting your chance. And we've never seen Drew to be that sort of guy, so it doesn't surprise me. But all of this, Phil, studying extra, getting extra workouts in, whatever it may be, I kind of expect that from him now until we get to the season. And, I'm not going to, I like it. I like to see it, but I'm not going to praise him for doing that, because that's my expectation for him. For me, what he's really he's going to change people's minds is when he gets back on the field in training camp or for a regular season game and can prove, hey, I have taken this step. Phil, it's like when you're a great regular season team in any sport, but you don't win in the playoffs. After a while, people they get kind of numb to your regular season success. And the only time you can really prove them differently is when you get to the playoffs. And to me, no matter what work Drew puts in the offseason, we've seen him do that before. He's got to now take a step. And so for me, I'm not sure if my overall evaluation or opinion changes until I see that change on the field.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to talk about things, but until you actually see it happening, then you're always going to wonder, okay, what's going on here? But I don't think you're being too dramatic about the state of Drew Lock's career here. I mean, I do think that a lot rests on this upcoming season if he is, in fact, the guy once again. I think that you got to be encouraged by what the Broncos had to say today, just because, Drew has been in town. We heard from Vic Fangio say that Drew is coming in and getting workouts. He sees him at the facility here. Drew's got a video system set up at his house, is what he was saying, and he's doing that prep. And that's what we've heard from Drew, is that when we last talked to him at the end of the regular season, he said, hey, I'm going to stay in town. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to do this film study. He was excited about the opportunity to be able to look at a whole season and not just 5 games. And, I think that there's no doubt that this next season is going to be really crucial for him, just because it's year 3 for him. He's got to be able to show that he can be a long-term winner here. And, until you show it, you're just not going to ever be sort of comfortable with that position, because it's the most important position in all sports. So unless you're really comfortable with the guy there, you're always going to be looking to bring in someone else. And the fact that Drew stayed in town and he's heard all these rumors and all the fan base saying, yeah, go out for Deshaun Watson, or, oh, what about Matthew Stafford? What about Russell Wilson? Him hearing that stuff, I think that's got to be motivating.
Yeah, no, I agree. And hopefully he does use it as motivation. I think he did a nice job as a rookie, kind of taking some of the motivation that he wasn't going to be ready to play at all, to get himself ready and play well in those last 5 games. But Again, I just think that for all the talk, last season, Phil, there was a lot of talk last offseason about this team can take a jump if Drew Lock can play at an MVP level, if he can be, X, Y, and Z, if he can be the next, which guys were, Carson Wentz, that type of player at the time, of course, that the Broncos are going to be really good, and none of it materialized. And so I think this offseason for him, it can't be any talk. When he gets on the podium at some point, which will happen, I'm sure, it can't be, hey, we're fired up. We got a lot of weapons. We're going to go put a lot of points on the board. I think you need to see a humble quarterback who's ready to work, and he's going to let his actions speak for themselves when he gets out there. And until then, I don't think you want to make any headlines. I don't think you want to make waves. You just want to work.
Yeah, and he has been quiet this offseason. He doesn't really post anything on social media, anything like that. I think he has taken this seriously. And, I think that it's a great example of how quick life in the NFL can just sort of hit you. You only play in 5 games as a rookie. You're really excited after that stretch. You feel like you're going to be the guy. The organization goes out and gets you all these weapons. Then your second year, you get banged up a little bit to start the season. You don't have an off season. You got a new system. Some of the things that you did in the past where you're taking these deep shots, or you're maybe being a little bit gutsy with the football, not necessarily working anymore. And all of a sudden now we're talking about his entire career maybe hanging in the balance. That's life in the NFL. I mean, even if the Broncos go out and get a guy to be a backup, say somebody who comes in and provides a little bit of competition, not necessarily to take that starting job, but is more of a proven commodity as your backup, maybe that leash you're on isn't quite as long anymore. And, we talked a lot last year about, hey, should he have gotten benched in a couple of these games? And the answer from you, and obviously from Vic Fangio, was no, that's going to hurt his development. But that's with Brett Rippon and Jeff Driscoll behind you. Fast forward to this year, if it's all of a sudden it's an Andy Dalton, or if it's a Fitzpatrick, somebody like that, then that leash is going to be really short. And if you're not getting it done, boom, you're out of the game. So I do think that things are going to be intense for Drew Lock, definitely at the start of next season. Let's play a quick thing from Vic Fangio here, just talking about what he hopes to see with competition at the quarterback position.
I'm confident that Drew's going to continue to improve. Drew's had a great offseason up to this point. There's not a lot you can do, but he's working hard on his own, coming over here and getting workouts. And I know he's doing a lot at home by himself, watching video by himself. He's got a good setup over there, and he's doing anything and everything he can to improve, even as in February and now in March. And I feel like he'll continue to improve as it relates to the quarterback carousel that everybody's talking about going around the league. We'll see how it turns out. Right now it's just a lot of rumors and innuendos and everybody proposing this and that. I really don't know what's going to happen with some of the names that are being bandied about out there.
What do you think about that, Eric? Sort of interesting. He said it's innuendos. He said that he doesn't know what's going to happen with those names that are circulating there. It's sort of interesting just hearing him talk about Drew, though.
Yeah, no, I think it becomes more and more clear that absent Deshaun Watson, that Drew's at least going to get a chance here to prove himself. And I think what George Paton said, he has all the things you need to be an NFL quarterback. His mindset off the field is correct, Phil, working hard, getting those extra reps in. I just think the biggest thing for Drew, the mindset on the field has to change, like you mentioned. Just too many mistakes that are we've heard Vic Fangio talk before about athletic arrogance and having a little bit of that. There are times when Drew has a little too much, and I think that the mindset on the field has to change to, let's make the smart throw, let's take what's there, let's not try to get it all back at once. If he can do that, I think he's got a chance to be a really good, really solid NFL quarterback. But again, we just got to see it.
Eric, do you think that he could take that away from him, though? It seems like his personality is not that. Like you see him rapping on the sidelines. That was like all the rage last offseason because he was playing well and people loved that fieriness. Everybody likes it when you're good and you're cocky and you've got this edge to you. But when you're not good, then all of a sudden people are saying, well, he shouldn't be doing that or he shouldn't be acting like that. What do you think? You think that it's just something that's ingrained in him to be able to play that way and you can't really take that away from him? Or do you think that these are areas you can improve on?
Well, I mean, I think there's a difference between rapping and dancing and celebrating, which I'm fine with all that. I think that it's good. It fires people up, especially on his team. What you can't do is throw an interception off your back foot because you're trying to make something happen at a time that makes no sense in the game to do that. That's got to change because otherwise it doesn't matter if it's part of your personality or not. It's going to, this season, I would think it's going to make you end up on the bench. And so he's got to figure that out. So, Phil, dance after you make a nice swing pass that the running back takes for a touchdown, or dance after you get the ball into Jerry Jeudy's hands and he takes it 92 yards, or you throw a ball up to Cortland Sutton that only he can get. Plenty of opportunities to dance, plenty of opportunities to rap, all that stuff. But you can't make, I think of a throw like the one he made against the Falcons where he's leaning back. I think about the one into the end zone against the Raiders. Those are throws you just cannot make. And that's not about game style or whatever. Those are just poor decisions.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say is that I think that you love to see Drew be Drew, like be that kind of leader in the locker room, be that kind of guy who's going to fire up his teammates, be that kind of guy who's got that confidence, but at the same time, learn, build new parts of your game, grow and adjust to the NFL level. And I think that you're going to see him have success just because, he's got all the tools. He's big, he's athletic, he can run around a little bit, he can make any throw on the football field. He's got all the physical tools. Now it's just about taking that and putting it into a package that works at the NFL level. Eric, here, I just want to play one more soundbite from Vic Fangio that we heard a little bit later on in his press conference, just talking more about the quarterback position.
Until we get or until Drew proves to be the next great quarterback, the ones that the Denver franchise has been used to in years past, or certain teams around the league, you guys know where they are used to. We're going to always try and bring in competition. But I have confidence that Drew can continue to improve.
What do you think about that, Eric? He kind of had to stop himself from saying, until we bring in a guy. And then he said, well, actually, until Drew can do it too. What did you think about him talking about wanting to increase competition there?
Well, it's just kind of what you said before. I mean, I think until you've got the guy, it makes sense to keep looking. And really, it's got to be a top 5 guy. I mean, there's conversations every year about if Matt Stafford is going to stay in Detroit or Matt Ryan's going to stay in Atlanta. I think even a guy like Dak Prescott, should the Cowboys commit the money they're going to need to commit to him, do they believe in him enough? So this conversation doesn't go away, if you suddenly get somebody else in the draft. I think that even teams with successful quarterbacks or that have had some success, you continue to see this time and time again. So I wouldn't read too much into that, other than that there's clearly been a shift from the 2020 offseason when everyone was 100% all in on Drew. This year, it's a little more tepid, and we'll just have to see where it goes. But I think everything just comes down to he's got to prove it on the field.
That's what I was going to mention, is just that there's a different tone where instead of giving him that support publicly that they did last offseason, this offseason they said, okay, now we've got to give some of that tough love, talking about, hey, let's increase the competition level here. Let's make it so that everybody's feeling a little bit of that pressure. That I think that is fair. It's been a long time since the Broncos have been in the playoffs. It's been a long time since had that taste of success and excitement late in the season. Eric, I think that it's time to just ramp up that pressure level a little bit, and the Broncos are certainly exploring those options. And Eric, we've talked about this in the past. Denver is a very attractive position for a top-notch backup quarterback, just because Drew's future a little bit shaky, and there's a lot of weapons. There's a lot to like about this Broncos offense. So you think that they should be able to go out there and get a premier backup quarterback if they want to?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's likely, and it'll just depend on who they want, and do they want someone that can challenge Drew for the starting position right off the back? Is it somebody that if Drew doesn't play well, you want to be able to step in? Lots of different options there. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. It wouldn't surprise me if maybe they don't sign someone in the initial wave of free agency. Maybe you wait to see what dust settles. George Paton kind of mentioned, or excuse me, Vic Fangio mentioned that George Paton's already kind of looked at some of the cap casualties that could be possibilities. And that's not just at the quarterback position, but really around just all over the roster. But maybe there's a guy that you don't expect that becomes available and could be a good fit in Denver for not a exorbitant salary.
And just because of the names that are still circulating out there as trade possibilities, you would be maybe surprised to go out and get a guy and then make a trade, for a big time player. I would think that the quarterback position is maybe a little bit of a slow play. I agree with you there, Eric. Let's move on to a couple of other guys that were topics of conversation on this Thursday. Eric, let's start with Justin Simmons. The deadline for the Broncos to apply the franchise tag on him is coming up next week. It does seem like that George Paton and Vic Fangio want Justin Simmons back.
Yeah, George Paton said his number one priority since getting to Denver has been trying to get Justin Simmons signed to a long-term deal. He didn't bring up the franchise tag. He wasn't specifically asked, would you tag him ahead of free agency? I think it's probably a decent bet that happens. I don't think the Broncos are going to give up that leverage because they would still have a few more months until July 15th to keep negotiating. But it certainly sounds more positive maybe than it did a year ago. I think they're probably closer on numbers anyway, because the franchise tag number that Justin would play for is pretty close to what the top safeties make anyway. And so they're not trying to maybe get as close from as far away as they were. And then just Justin Simmons was on Sirius XM the other day, and he sounded really positive. Kind of his end of season press conference, Phil, sounded almost like a goodbye from Justin, just with how somber it was. He didn't want to talk about his future. On Sirius XM, he said, "I want to be back." And he didn't really say that at his end of season press conference. He kind of stayed away from all that. So I think it shows that maybe the relationship is mending a little bit. Having George Paton in there has helped. We're going to go through these guys, Phil, that George Paton said he wants back. Justin Simmons is going to be on this team next year. I feel very, very confident in that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the bigger question is just whether or not they get a long-term deal done. If they can finally settle on some numbers here, just where it makes sense for both sides. But yes, football player Justin Simmons checks all the boxes, especially in today's NFL. I think off the field, he's the leader. He's a strong guy in the community. I think that he's exactly what you want. In both areas there. So definitely a guy that the Broncos want to see come back. And it wouldn't surprise me if they tag him, just so it buys them a little bit of extra time to work on a deal. And then the big question is just whether or not they get that deal done. So that is, I think, priority number one for this Broncos team is to just get that done, put that in the past and move on. I think that would send a message to everybody else in the locker room, a lot of the younger guys, just that, hey, if you do things the right way, the Broncos are going to keep you, and they value good young players who play hard and go about their business the right way. I think that would send a nice message. And I think that it would be an opportunity to just turn the page and focus on other areas. Hey, let's just get this done, and then let's go out and do some other stuff here.
Yeah, you're right. It is about more than just Justin. It's a chance for George Payton to set the tone and say, "Hey, Cortland Sutton, you're eligible for an extension. You do the right things. You come back from your injury. We're going to take care of you." Bradley Chubb, we're going to take care of you. He didn't specify what was going to happen with that fifth-year option. I think there's a decent chance that gets picked up. Maybe the only reason that's a little maybe is if he is just a much higher number now than it was a year ago because of the new CBA. But guys like that, Noah Fant when it gets to that time, Dalton Reisner. I mean, these are guys that we've talked about this again and again. The good problem you have when you draft well is that there's guys to extend, and so um, you'd like to see him take care of them, and you'd like in general, for things like this Justin Simmons thing to be solved much before you have to franchise tag someone for a second time.
Exactly. What do you think about what George Payton had to say about Von Miller? Said that he wants to bring him back, but the legal stuff, they're taking it seriously.
Yeah, Justin Simmons, like I said, a kind of certainty. Everybody else that he mentioned, I think there's a little wiggle room because you probably can't bring all of these guys back. Or you could, but then you're gonna have to cut somebody else elsewhere. You're not gonna have money to re-sign other free agents. Vaughn, I think we're just gonna have to see. He didn't go into specifics about if he'd asked Vaughn to restructure. He said he didn't want to talk about that. I kind of think if he hadn't asked him, he would have said, no, we haven't, just because there's no reason to kind of keep that quiet. So that makes me think that, is it a restructure? Is it a contract extension? But Phil, we're getting close. We've got about 10 days left before that decision has to be made. I'm less certain there. I think it really truly might be a coin flip about whether he's back in Denver next year.
Yeah, Von Miller definitely seems like up in the air to me. Did not really learn anything new. I think they played it pretty good, in terms of not giving up any sort of information about him, other than they hope that he's back. They hope that they could eventually see that pairing of Von Miller and Bradley Chubb. That's what we all wanted to see here, and we've just really not gotten that chance, at least with Vic Fangio as the head coach. With Bradley Chubb going down in the fourth game of the season in 2019, Von Miller missing all of last year. I think that they want Von back. It's just if it makes sense financially. I think that it is going to have to truly be a wait and see with Von. There are several other guys that the Broncos talked about. Kareem Jackson was another guy that seemed like they're up in the air. George Payton said that he's talked with Kareem's agent and that he doesn't view Kareem and Justin as sort of affecting each other. He said they're two separate things.
Yeah, Phil, according to reports, Kareem's option right now is just 1.5 million. So, there's a chance you could see them pick it up. And then if kind of like they did with Todd Davis a year ago, and then maybe if you get to training camp and things aren't going well, or Kareem Jackson's lost a step, then maybe you move on and you eat $1 million, which, for most people is a lot. For guys like you, Phil, for the Broncos, you can just kind of toss aside $1 million and deal with it. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Kareem's back. I think he's probably less likely to get an extension, maybe, and that's just speculative. But I think the depth of the safety class in the draft, the number of guys that are on the free agent market, maybe it just doesn't make quite as much sense there.
I agree. And I think that Kareem brings something that the Broncos don't really have elsewhere outside of Von Miller. And that's just a veteran who's been in the league, who kind of can put his arm around a guy like Justin Simmons and be like, here's how you carry yourself in these situations, just stuff like that. I think Kareem is an important sort of a elderly statesman of sorts, where he could just say, here's what it's like to be a player in the NFL and here's how you handle yourself and stuff. I think that Kareem is valuable. And also, he's a heck of a player on the field. I mean, he brings an intimidation factor in the secondary where you're not necessarily getting that from Justin Simmons. And, he comes in and lays the wood and forces fumbles and does things that you need in the secondary. So I think that it would make sense if they could somehow figure out a way to bring back Kareem. Just a couple more here, Eric, before we get to my conversation with George Paton. But as far as some of these guys that they want to tender, Peyton said that they're going to tender everybody. He just wasn't specific about what grade he was going to give these guys. He says that they're going to tender Tim Patrick, Philip Lindsay, Alexander Johnson. They're going to tender those guys, but he didn't really go into much more detail than that.
Yeah, and I think the important thing to understand here is that if you give a second round tender to these guys, you're going to keep them, I think. Tim Patrick's a heck of a player. Alexander Johnson's a starter. Philip Lindsay, obviously a Pro Bowler. But I don't think a team's going to give up a second round pick for them. And if they do, I think if you're the Broncos, you say, hey, George Paton loves draft picks. That's okay with us. The late round tender, I think any of those guys that gets, or excuse me, an original round tender, any of those guys that gets that put on them, I think they're probably gone. And because I do think, someone will sign a Pro Bowl running back for an original round, they'll make an offer sheet the way that a few years ago, Phil, the Dolphins did on CJ Anderson, and the Broncos met that. And so they kept CJ Anderson, but I don't know if they would do the same thing with Philip Lindsay, or if Tim Patrick, gets offered $8 million a year, are they going to pay Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, and Tim Patrick that much money? I don't know. Same with Alexander Johnson. So to me, the late round tender is kind of like it's worth putting on them in case they slip through and you're able to keep them. But it really, I would guess that my guess of what will happen is that I would think second round tenders for Tim Patrick and Alexander Johnson and a late round tender for Philip Lindsay. But again, I think any of those guys that gets an original round tender is probably gone. And the way the compensation works for those people who are not familiar is that another team can offer that player a contract. If the Broncos decide not to match it, because all these guys are former undrafted players, the Broncos get nothing in return. So it's a little bit of a tricky situation, but I think you're essentially deciding, can we pay each of these guys $3 million? And the answer is probably not.
Yeah, I agree with you that it seems like right now, Tim Patrick and Alexander Johnson, a little bit more valuable than Philip Lindsay at the current time. What's interesting, Eric, is that when it comes time to talk about these players, it does seem like fans want all these guys to come back. But what's strange is you're not seeing the results on the field. Do you know what I mean? The Broncos aren't winning a ton of games, but yet when it comes time to part ways with a guy, a lot of fans are saying, we got to keep this guy. We got to keep this guy. And it's like, well, if you want to get better, you're going to have to make some tough changes.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I do think that, a guy like Justin Simmons, you simply don't have enough top end players on your team right now to afford to let one of them go. So it is a little bit different with a guy like Justin Simmons than with a guy like Philip Lindsay, maybe. But yeah, you're right, Phil, that, you can think the world of these guys and you cheer them on every week, but something clearly isn't working and maybe they just need a new combination. Maybe you need to bring somebody else in, but it is a good point. Shelby Harris is the other guy, Phil, that he mentioned. That kind of surprised me. He said Shelby Harris is a real priority in free agency, kind of one of their top targets. A year ago, the Broncos essentially said, good luck, thank you, go see what's out there for you, and then re-signed him to a really team-friendly one-year deal when essentially Shelby Harris's market never materialized. I kind of expected him, Phil, to take the same approach this year and just say, hey, if good luck again. If things don't work out, we'd love to have you back. But it almost seems like they're willing to go after him and give him that contract that he's looking for.
Well, the other approach is, hey, they let go of Jarrell Casey. Let's make it a priority to bring back Shelby Harris. Let's not see what the market what the market is for him. Let's go ahead and dictate his market. Let's jump out in front of it. Let's not go crazy, but let's just make him a priority. Let's not let him test the waters too much, and let's bring him back. So
you got about 10 days left to do that.
Yeah. So we'll see. It's going to be a big 10 days here before the start of the new league year. After the press conferences today, I did have a chance to catch up one-on-one with George Paton. Here's my conversation with the new Broncos general manager.
George, I know you wanted to hit the ground running. How have the last couple of months gone?
It's been great. It's been a good transition. It's been good getting to meet everyone, all the different departments in the organization, and sitting down with our scouts and the coaches and the cap and Richard Tato and John, and just getting to know the lay of the land and getting into football and free agency and now in draft meetings. So it's been really good.
Now that you've had a chance to settle in a little bit, what do you feel like the number one priority is this offseason?
Just to help this football team, with the best players, with high character players, and just try to get us better at every position, more better depth and create a team culture, within the locker room.
Stepping up, throwing over the middle, and it's intercepted, picked off at about the 40-yard line. Coming back is Justin Simmons.
I know you had a chance to talk a little bit about Justin Simmons.
Yes.
What have your chats been like with him?
I've only had one or two chats with him, and they've been great. And he's relayed to me he wants to be a Bronco, and he's the type of player we want here long term.
You said you want Von Miller back too.
Yes.
What does he bring to this defense? Such a dynamic player, obviously.
Yeah, he just brings juice. He's a unique pass rusher, and that's something that's a priority in this league. So when you get a guy like him and Chubb on the field at the same time, the Broncos haven't seen that, too often. So it'd be nice to see them in that role.
Yeah, that's what everybody was excited about when Vic first came to Denver. You mentioned Drew Lock as well. You said you've seen him around the facility. What do you want him to do this offseason? What do you want his approach to be?
Just do what he's doing. He's working every day. Don't put too much pressure on yourself, but he's working every day and just improve on things that he really needs to work on. And it's important that he's self-aware and knows what he needs to work on. But I see him here every day, and he's working hard.
Wide open target. There he is, Tony. Sutton breaks the tackle.
How about a guy like Cortland Sutton? He must be around too, the excitement surrounding a player like that too.
Yeah, I just saw him running routes on the field, so that was fun. That made my day. But no, he's working hard. He's a great player. He's a great worker. He's a great leader. So he's the type of player we want here.
Just a couple more for you, George. Normally we'd be talking at the Combine in Indianapolis. How do you think things are going to be different this year without a Combine?
They're going to be different. I think there's going to be more priority on your college scouts and the evaluation, because you're not going to be able to spend as much time at the schools. So really, I'm going to rely on our scouts and the information and the background, and we're going to hit the pro days hard, and maybe go to more pro days than we've gone in previous years. So I think, it's really going to be a scout-centric draft, I think.
It's pretty early in the process, but where do you feel like the strength of this draft is?
Well, it is early. I think it's another strong receiver class. I think there's some good offensive linemen as well. But we're still getting through our meetings, so I'll talk to you here in a month or so.
Okay, you probably won't give away anything then.
Probably not. No, probably not.
George, I know that you've been here early in the morning working hard, but have you had a chance to get around the city at all, see anything?
I've gone on a few hikes, a few jogs, and a few restaurants, and so that's about the extent of it. But it's been great. The good thing is, and I tell my family, is when I'm working on the weekend, the sun's out every day, or pretty much every day, which is a little different than Minneapolis. So it's been great.
Pretty soon you'll be a Coloradan.
Exactly, yeah. Looking forward to it. Yeah, get my family here, and then we're Coloradoans.
Eric, my thanks to George Paton for taking some time to chat there. A lot of similar topics to the press conferences, a lot of the talk about the free agents and stuff, but was interesting to hear him say that, with regards to the draft and everything that's coming up, they're going to probably value pro days a little bit more just without there being a combine and that kind of stuff. So I think that we're about to head into some uncharted waters in terms of teams really preparing to draft a player that they haven't had very specific measurables on, haven't had a chance to really meet with this person, face to face. It's going to be an interesting couple of months, and we'll talk a lot about that, obviously, on the show.
Yeah. Did you were okay saying, "Hey, George"? Didn't kind of try to say John or anything? You were all right there?
I was okay, yes.
Yeah.
My instinct started to go John, but I morphed it George.
It's nice that they kind of start with the same sound.
Yeah. Well, I got to spend some time around George, just being here at the facility. Not sure if you saw it, Eric, but we released the first teaser trailer for Behind the Broncos. No shortcuts. make sure you check that out. That's coming up this next Tuesday, March 9th, Eric, is when we're dropping the first episode.
Which one of those is the name?
No Shortcuts, I think, is technically the name of this, but
Got it.
The episodic, if that's a word that we like
It
to
is.
do in the business, the docu-series type of content, that will all be under the umbrella of Behind the Broncos.
Got it. I just wanted to make sure to know what to search, because I imagine you could find this on like YouTube.
Yes, YouTube, I think, is going to be a big place to consume that. But what I was trying to say, Eric, is we got to spend some time around George Paton. Got a little bit of a chance to know the personality a little bit, and we're going to highlight that a lot in some of this cool content coming up.
Oh, so you already know what they're going to do with Von Miller.
Of course I do. Yeah, I've been in all of those talks.
Got it. So you're just leading, you're kind of like letting me just talk, and you're like, yeah, he has no idea what he's saying.
Get a load of this guy, Eric. I don't really need to be in those meetings to know that or think that about you. So
that's true. That's fair.
Let's wrap up the show here, Eric, talking about one last player. If you could believe it or not, there's so many guys with their future up in the air. But one guy we wanted to highlight here at the end is Juwan James, the Broncos right tackle, that they went out in the 2019 offseason, made that a big priority, made Juwan James the highest paid right tackle in the NFL, brought him in, and we're expecting big things from him. It hasn't quite materialized just yet. A lot of injury problems in 2019, couldn't stay on the field. And then last year, of course, opted out before the season due to COVID and everything. So it brings up an interesting position for the Broncos and Juwan James heading into this next year.
Yeah, and the truth of the matter is, Phil, is, George Payton said he's talked to Juwan James and that Juwan's excited to come back and play again. And Vic said the same thing. And that's good news. The truth is the Broncos don't have a whole lot of options here because he opted out, the contract does not toll from a year ago. And so essentially there's still this massive salary cap hit that you'd take in dead money if you were to move on from Juwan James. And so for all intents and purposes, Juwan James is going to be on this roster unless something crazy happens and they just decide to eat that money. But you might as well at least see what you have in him before coming to that decision. But, I think best case scenario, because we've kind of seen the worst case scenario, which was that he didn't play much in 2019 and at all in 2020, is that say he does come in and he, plays at the level, like the first half of the Texans game in 2019, he was really good. And Drew played really well in that half. He threw 3 touchdown passes. If he plays at that level, then you've still got him under contract for 2 more years after next year because of the contract not tolling. So it could be kind of an unexpected benefit. You'd have Garrett Bowles under contract at left tackle. You'd have a really good set of bookends there. And then you talk about young talent and Lloyd Cushenberry and Dalton Reisner. Graham Glasgow is a good player. Netani Muti, I think he's going to push for a starting job sooner or later. So those are all, you could have a really strong offensive line that's all under contract for the next couple of years. And that's if things go well. And, we'll have to see. But, I think it is encouraging, Phil, I guess, that Juwan is enthused about coming back. We'll have to see. I do think he's going to have to earn some of the trust of his teammates back. Garrett Bowles mentioned that early last season, right after he opted out. But that'll be a storyline to monitor. But Phil, if they can solve that right tackle issue, which was an issue in 2020, they'll definitely be a lot better off.
I was going to say, do you think that Juwan comes in and is immediately the day one starter, or do you think that Elijah Wilkinson has something to say about it, or how do you think they'll handle that?
Well, Elijah Wilkinson's an unrestricted free agent, so they'd have to re-sign him or figure something else out. It wouldn't surprise me if the Broncos, say like a guy like Sewell fell down to 9th in the draft or something, and you had concerns about Juwan James long-term. I think you probably have to consider taking him there. Maybe you find a right tackle somewhere else in the draft just to develop in case things don't work out. But Elijah Wilkinson struggled at times. DeMar Dotson played pretty well, but, he's also an unrestricted free agent. It wasn't perfect by any means. If you could get another really good tackle in there, to complement Garrett Bowles, you would be in good shape. And on the offense, you've kind of got a few holes. You've got quarterback, if depending on what happens with Drew and how he progresses. You've got running back, depending on what happens with Philip Lindsay and Melvin Gordon, and then you've got right tackle. And so, for all the additions you made a year ago, there's still things to figure out. And I think the best case scenario is that a player that you're already paying can be that guy.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I would say that the offense is in much better shape than the defense is right now.
Yes.
A lot more holes on that side of the ball. But yeah, I think you're right. If Juwan James could come in and be that guy on that right tackle, then I think you really have to be optimistic about this offensive line. I could see them trying to bring back Elijah Wilkinson, but maybe he might not want to come back just if he's not got a chance to really play. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle that. If Sewell drops to number 9, let me just tell you, I think that the phone is going to be ringing off the hook, because you're talking about maybe the best offensive lineman falling to 9. I think you'd have to have a serious consideration, or if not, you're moving back in the draft.
Well, I think our guy Rashawn Slater probably is already off the board at that point. Maybe he goes. I hear him and the Jacksonville's really confused about whether to take him or Trevor Lawrence.
I've been hearing really good things about this Penei Sewell, the tackle, obviously from Oregon. I'm hearing like really good things. So
some Pac-12 bias, I think.
Just saying, Eric. Eric, let's wrap up the show like we always like to do. Shout outs. Anybody that you want to particularly highlight in today's show?
Probably Liz Manis would be good.
I think
we got International Women's Day coming up, Phil.
Yes. We do have some special content coming up for Monday, Eric, highlighting some of the employees who work for the Broncos, and really excited about that. I think that this year they're doing something called Choose to Challenge. That's the International Women's Day motto this year is Choose the Challenge. So we have some cool stuff coming up with that. So be sure.
Excited to see it.
Yeah. That's not a docuseries. Behind the Broncos.
Choose the Challenge.
Choose the Challenge. That's not what this is.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Also, a shout out, I think, our friend Ben Swanson. He decided to come to work this week.
Yes, he did. There was some love for Ben Swanson. We did get an email, Eric, the other day, just talking about the impact that his Marlon Briscoe, what would you call that? Would you call that more like sort of a book, or like what would you say that is?
Yeah, maybe like what would you call a written series? I'm not quite sure what the verbiage is for that.
Broncos, something.
But this person, they said they really liked the video Ben Swanson did on Marlon Briscoe.
Yeah.
Not a video. We know there were some paintings that he did, and there were some words. I haven't seen the video yet. I do believe that they probably exist, that he's made those. I haven't seen them.
Yeah, I have not seen it either. But I did see a drawing, an illustration. I did see that. So that was pretty cool. So got to give him a shout out as well. But also shout out Liz Manis. So
yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap up this episode. If you'd like to get in touch with the show, 707-NEUTRAL. Leave a voicemail and we'll play it right here on the air. Let us know what you think about the draft coming up, because we're going to have a lot of talk about the draft. Vic Fangio today was asked about the cornerback position, so we're going to save that for next week. Let us know what you think the Broncos should do with that number 9 spot, and we'll break it down on next week's show. You can also leave an email somehow, Eric.
That's right, Phil. Again, neutralzoneshow@gmail.com.
Interesting. Or you could just smash that subscribe right down there on YouTube. Smash it. And then leave a comment. We love to read the comments. We read all the comments, especially comments about my hair. We love those kind of comments, Eric.
Yeah. You don't have the fan on, but normally you've got it facing the other way so that it's kind of like a...
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I do pretty much all the rest of the day, beside when I'm recording the Neutral Zone.
Right.
Yeah. This bad boy doesn't just happen on its own. So it needs a lot of air.
No, I'm glad it doesn't. You don't want that going kind of untamed, unregulated.
Yes. You can also find us on Twitter at Eric Dalala with an A, at Phil Milani with a PH. Very untraditional spellings there. Very strange, Eric, if you ask me. But that's who we are. That's what this show is all about. A little bit of strangeness, but that's how you can get in contact with us. Our thanks once again to George Paton for taking some time to chat and break down what's about to become a very important 10 days here for the Broncos as they head into the new league year. We'll be back next week, but until then, for Eric Dalala, I am Phil Milani. You've been listening to
The Neutral Zone.